Welcome to Car Wash How To. I want to give you a quick rundown of the history of car washing. Back in the 70s, there's three models of car washing that were around. You had your full serve tunnel wash, you had your in bays at the gas stations, and you had your self-serves. The tunnel washes were a creature to themselves. They were very expensive, labor intensive, kind of crude at the time. They used a logging chain and a hook to hook onto the bumper of the cars to drag them through the car wash. That industry had a lot of developing to go. Then you had the in bays. Well, at the time in the early 70s, they were basically, and I may get some of this wrong, but they're basically two manufacturers, Mark 7 and Ryco. At the time, one of them, they were both producing touch units. They used a material that we kind of called weed eater car washes. The material on it, the strings on the material were polypropylene, almost like the string you use on your weed eater. And the convenience stores were having a lot of damages. So the convenience stores finally told the car wash manufacturers, look, we're getting out of the business. We got too many claims. We're not going to do this anymore. So the two guys went back to the drawing board, Mark 7 and Ryco. I can't tell you which was which, but one of them said, hey, let's do something a little different. They ended up creating a touchless wash. So they went back to the market with the touchless wash and decided to also take their competitor's unit as trade-in. So by doing this, they stole the entire market. So when they did, they ended up selling a whole lot of these car washes, and at the time the chemistry had just not come along, so they didn't really clean a car very well. Well, then you get over to the self-serve market. That market in the early 70s was basically a way of warehousing land. The car wash, you went in the main intersection, you backed up about 4 or 5 blocks and then went down a secondary street, and you would find a self-serve wash. Very similar to mini storage. It was a metal building, metal roof, basically a way to warehouse a piece of land. It was all cash, had no way of controlling the monies. And at that point, the investor, the guy that was running that, was usually a mom and pop. He ran his own car wash because the money wasn't accountable. And so that guy finally realized that as the chemicals came around, the convenience stores started making money with their in bays. So the self-serve guy looked at that and said, wait a minute, if they can make money with an in bay, and they have a $5 an hour girl working their register that's unfamiliar with that car wash, and you got to understand, to run a touchless car wash, there's about four different things that have to be perfect to clean a car. You got to have the proper pH on the chemistry. You got to have the proper hardness and softness of the water. And you got to have the proper temperature of the water and the proper PSI of the pressure of the water to create a clean car. Now, the chemistry to do that is not an easy thing, especially for an unattended car wash being run by an attendant that's inside a gas station. So the self-serve guy looked over at that and said, wait, that's kind of interesting. If they can run that without being producing a clean car, and we're over here living on our merits, we may be able to try that. So the self-serve industry looked at that for a little while, and along about the 80s, there were a couple of people in the self-serve industry that created timers that had non-resettable counts. So at the time, up to that point, the owners of the car washes were mom and pops because the money was all cash. It was not accountable. Somebody had to collect it and keep it and count it and deposit it. You couldn't let everybody play in it. But about the 80s, they started creating timers with non-resettable counts. When that happened, the financing of a self-serve car wash became to the point that the doctor, the lawyer, the investor could now get into the business and have someone else pull his money for him. So in the late 80s, early 80s, we sold a lot of in-bay car washes and a lot of self-serves. These self-serves, we had a lot of people saying, hey, I want a passive income. Well, I've got to tell you, car washing is not a passive income. It's a mechanically intense business, and every piece of equipment in that car wash has to work to produce a clean car. So, but needless to say, when the money started coming in, car washes that were built originally on the 3 or 4 blocks down Secondary Street, well, now they decided, hey, and let's move to the main drag. So now they moved over to the main street. They're still 3 blocks down from the main intersection, but they're on the main street. Well, when they did that, they started looking and they said, hey, we're producing a fairly good amount of money. Well, self-serve is a planned activity. The end base at the convenience stores is an impulse buy. Well, at that point, the self-serve guys remembered that the convenience stores were actually at that point selling their washes. They originally started, if you bought 8 gallons of gas, you got a free wash. Well, then they started selling them and making a little money. So the self-serve guy said, well, wait a minute. If they've got that and they can produce a car of quality enough that they can sell it, we could do that too, because we live on our merits. Well, just so happens that the square footage of a in-bay car wash will almost fit in the square footage of one self-serve bay. Well, when you start looking at the income numbers, one automatic will produce what 4 self-serve bays will produce back in the days. So the self-serve operator said, hey, I'm going to add to my property, I'm going to add 4 self-serves, and I'm going to put 1 automatic. Well, that 1 automatic produced what 4 self-serve bays would produce. So now their incomes went up double, and they started catering to the impulse buy. Well, industry came along a little bit more, and I don't know if I can use names or not in these videos, but there was a gentleman at Jim Coleman Company, Randy Coleman, that decided to create a car wash that's marketed to the end user. Lots of color, lots of good looks, lots of canopies, lots of eye candy. By doing this, he now allowed the self-serve investor to move from the secondary location on the prime street to the main corner on the prime street. So now they moved up to the corner where Walgreens existed. So now they're buying property next door to the Walgreens. Well, you add 2 automatics and 4 bays of self-serve, and your income per square foot becomes pretty good. So if 1 automatic equals 4 bays of self-serve in the same square footage as 1 bay equals, you've got a pretty good little income there. So these started popping up all over in the 80s, had very good incomes. They started building Taj Mahals, getting them bigger and bigger and fancier. So meanwhile, the full-serve car washes were going about their own thing, washing cars and getting better at it, getting better equipment, getting longer tunnels, getting a little bit of some computer-based in it, customer tracking, customer data stuff. But what they found out is it was very intensive on labor. Well, I had a full serve. Wouldn't have wished it on my worst enemy. So let me tell you a little bit about a full serve tunnel. Full serve tunnel ends up with about 10 or 12 people on the clock, usually high school kids or immigrants. You're paying a minimum wage employee combined with the person's first or second most expensive investment, first being their house, second being their car, depending on if they're a renter or not, is not a good combination. So now you had a young guy outside, car pulls up, he sells the car, little lady hops out, he talks to her, he says, hey, your rims are dirty, you really need the $20 car wash. So he's selling her the car wash. She goes inside. Well, lo and behold, the boy outside selling the car wash and the girl inside ringing her up were boyfriend and girlfriends. So guess what? The boy outside sold her a $20 car wash. The girl inside downgraded her to a $5 car wash, pocketed the $15, and now they went out every night on the car wash tab. Very easy to find if you watch your back end on your car wash controllers. So okay, well, I'll tell you what. Son, you go home. Girl, you go home. they make a machine that'll replace that. So now you put out a pay station out there, send the boy home, send the girl home. Well, then the car gets pulled into the tunnel. In the tunnel, you have prep people. These guys were to pressure wash the car, get the bird poop off, prep the rims, get it ready to send through the tunnel. Well, next thing you look, they're over there squirting each other with the high-pressure gun. They're surfing on the rollers. They're too lazy to pick up the bug block and get the bugs off of the nose of the car or the mirrors, so they're putting the pressure gun right on the mirror, blowing the paint off. They're squirting each other with the gun. They're acting up, and you're like, look, you know what? Industry says I can't afford to put high pressure in that tunnel, but at this point it's depreciable, and it shows up to work every day, and it doesn't goof off. You two guys go home, and I'm going to put high pressure in the tunnel. So now you cut some more employees. Well, going through the tunnel, you start looking and look out front, and I had a professional football player live in the area. Unbeknownst to me, he bought my employees for $200. Yeah, $200. When his car came out the front, we had Kentwood water jugs for tip jars. Ended up having professional football player call us, all the employees over to this lane and say, hey, come here. Poked a $100 bill in their tip jar. Called the guys in the other lane, poked a $100 bill in their tip jar. Now, when he came through, he'd buy the $5 car wash. They would rub on his car for 20 minutes. We real quickly realized that, hey, I tell you what, they make a machine that will armor all those tires. So, you know what? You two guys go home. Well, then you look up, and when the car comes out, you also have, at the very end of the tunnel, you had towel guys drying the cars down. Well, real quickly you learn that the car is still in the tunnel in a hidden spot where not a lot of people can see it. Come to find out, all the druggies wanted to work that spot so they could steal the drugs out of the cars, and the druggies wouldn't. Who's going to call the cops? The druggies going to call the cops on the employees that stole his drugs out of the car? No. Well, then they're up in there popping each other with the towels. So he said, you know what? Instead of you guys, y'all go home. I'm going to add 90 more horsepower of dryers. And it's depreciable, shows up to work every time, works every time, only on the cars called for. So when you get done, you end up with all of this equipment and no employees. Oh, there was another one. You start looking out at the vacuum system. Big central vacuum system with the central collector on it. And you start looking and saying, hey, why are all the kids every night begging to be the one to clean the vacuums out? Come to find out, they're using the vacuum to steal. They pull the nozzle off of the end and suck up all the change out of the end of the console. So you find out real quickly that anything that'll fit in a 2-inch vacuum hose that they wanted, they would suck it up, and at the end of the night they would go to the vacuum and get it. So you look at that and you say, nope, y'all are going home too. So at the end of the day, you send all your employees home. So now, guess what you're left with? You're left with the pay station. Cars pull up to the pay station. One guy load it, send it through. Now this big vacuum system left on the other end, what I do with it? You know what? Let's give it to the customer for free. So there is how you became an express car wash. Very little labor, lots of volume. It's basically the Walmart of the car wash. You're now going for high volume, low tickets, and trying to get the people in and out. Well, the more that model came about, it's an impulse buy, it's a convenience. It now took the top of the food chain. You start looking at self-serve. They've now created in-bays with them. They added them to move to the main corner. They're producing good money. The C-stores have kind of gotten out of the in-bay business. You'll see a lot of those that are vacant, have nothing in them anymore. Then you see the expresses start coming on. Well, the in-bays no longer can compete with an express. If you have an in-bay car wash and it takes 8 minutes to wash a car, how many cars can you poke through in an hour? What's your possible production in a 24 hours? You take an express wash, on a tunnel wash, you're 1 car per foot per hour. You got a 130-foot tunnel, you can wash 130 cars an hour in a 10-hour day, 1,300 car possibility. At a $10 average ticket, it's $13,000 a day. So now the express model per square foot is producing way more income than any of the other models. So that's kind of where the industry has gotten. You go to the major towns like Atlanta, you won't find a self-serve car wash being built. It's just not profitable to compete against the express models. At this time in the industry, European equity money has come over from Europe with no strings attached, and there's now about 4 consolidators in the industry buying up every express wash they can and putting in one on every corner they can. So the industry is in a time right now that's a little unusual, uncharted territory, lots of money coming into the industry. But now you've got the various models. You've got self-serve, you got in-bay, and you've got tunnels. Tunnels come in express, flex, or full serve. Because of the labor situation, you see very few full serves, very few flex, mainly expresses. In the self-serve, you see a lot of closed down self-serves. The market is hard to compete in. The costs have gone up. The margins are smaller and smaller. The in-bays, you're seeing fewer and fewer of those because of more and more express models that can't compete with the throughput. So that's where the industry is right now. It's kind of in a little turmoil of what model is the productive model, what model is happening, which ones are going to be the winner of the top of the pyramid. So that'll give you the industry in a nutshell, kind of where we stand and what's going on at this point. Hopefully that gives you a little insight.